You want to start, Madhu?
Okay. Badram Karanebihi Shunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Ryajatraha Stirairangayir Tushtuam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitay Yadayuhu Swastinah Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinah Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinah Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. Okay, good evening. So this is part 6 of Mandukya Upanishad or Mandukya Upanishad. But in total, this is 8 weeks of our contemplation of Mandukya Upanishad. So we are entering into the third month next week, and we'll proceed with Mandukya Upanishad, talking about deeper philosophical concepts. So a quick recap as before. Harihi Om Om iti etad aksharam idang sarvam tasya upavyakyanam bhutabhavad bhavishyaditi sarvam omkara eva yachanya trikalatitam tadapi omkara eva sarvam hi etad brahma ayamatma brahma so ayamatma chatushpat. So this Omkara Tattva we have seen over the last 2 months. It's a name of the Supreme Being, and it describes him as a being with infinite auspicious attributes, no defects. Jnanananda Maya, he is omniscient, he is omnipotent. This Omkara gives us an idea that this omnipotent being creates, maintains, and destroys the universe. He is omnipresent in everything at all times, in all places. He pervades the all of Brahmanda, and he can be known through the Vedas. And the concept of God, as we understand as mundane beings, is also revealed by the Omkara Tattva. So this Omkara is not just in the Brahmanda, it has also pervaded nook and corner of this body of ours, and has also pervaded this Jivatman. He's also inside the Jivatman. And primarily, this Omkara Tattva is celebrated in the Upanishads as Atma. And who is this Atma? This Atma is described and defined in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Yatmani tishtan atmano antaro yamayati yeshate atma antaryami. So this Atma is your antaryamin. He is your Paramatma, is the definition of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So this Paramatma or Brahman controls four aspects of the dispensations of the Jivas. So what are those four aspects of the dispensations of the Jivas? Three aspects or the states of consciousness of the Jiva is in the material existence, it is in the samsara. And the fourth state of consciousness of the Jiva is in the liberated state, what we call as moksha, which is not only self-realization but God realization, but you also disentangle yourself from the material uh, universe, as it were. So the Varuna has told us that this Omkara Tattva controls four states of consciousness of the Jivas. The first state is the Jagrati Stanaha, Bahihi Prajnaha, Saptangaha, Yekona Vimshati Mukaha, Stulabuk Vaishwanaraha Pratamaha Padaha, as Varuna defines it, saying that the first state of the consciousness is in the waking state, from sunrise to sunset, where we are doing activities, our daily living, our professional work, and whatever else, our other interests that we may pursue, and whatever politics that we may want to get involved in. All these come under the Jagrati Sthana. And that conscious state where the Jiva operates this is controlled by this Brahman, who is called Vaishwa or Vaishwanaraha. स्वप्नस्थानः अन्तः प्रज्ञः सप्ताङ्गः एकोनविंशतिमुखः प्रविविक्तबुक् तेजसो द्वितीयपादः. The second state of the consciousness of the jiva is when it has been doing all its day-to-day activities, it's got tired and it's now going to sleep. And as it drifts off into sleep, it goes into initially a stage of sleep where it is dreaming. So we discussed the aspect of dream, the scientific basis of dream. Is dream real or unreal? How is this dream created? What is the Upanishad's view? What is our Rishi's view? How does that tally with the current scientific understanding of dream? So we kind of compared and contrasted last week. That was about the dream. And I also told you about how dream in Vedic philosophy takes great philosophical significance. So, if dream is of such great philosophical significance, then the third stage of consciousness of the Jivas assumes even more of significance in Vedantic philosophy. So, this is what we are going to deal today, the third state of consciousness of the Jiva. Yatra shuptaha na kanchana kamam kamayate na kanchana swapnam pashyati tat sushuptam. Sushupti stanaha eki bhutaha prajnana gana eva anandamayohi anandabuk cheto mukaha prajnaha tritiyaha padaha. This is the verse that we are going to deal with today. I think we'll dissect it word by word. The significance of what Varuna is telling us is so profound in this verse. But to understand what is it that Varuna wants us to understand, we need to actually go back to our Upanishads and understand what is the Vedic view of all this. What is the Sushupti state and so on. So we will spend the first initial slides talking about this Sushupti state of consciousness of the Jivas, and then we will go into what is it that Varuna is actually telling us. Okay, so just to recap, what is happening in the wakeful state, what we call as Jagrati Stanaha, you got the external world, then you have the Pindanda. Through your sense organs, you process the information from outside. It goes to your brain. The brain processes it, and the evolute of the brain, that is the mind, then that sends some signal to the jiva, and the jiva then becomes aware of what is happening in the external world. The jiva becomes conscious. That state of the jiva in the wakeful state, where it is conscious of not only its body but also the external world, is defined as Jagrati Sthanaha. Now, this Jagrati Sthana is also under the control of the Antaryamin. Yeah, we all know that we may want to do whatever things in life, but we don't get all the things that we want. Man proposes, God disposes is the proverb, and that fits very well with the Vedic philosophy in this equation of Jagrati Sthana. Now, in the dream state, what is happening? In the dream state, our Indriyas have all closed off. Our Indriyas are not in touch with the external world. This is the 5 gross Indriyas of our body, which is not in contact with the external world. That is the dream state, because the brain is still functioning, the brain is still active. The vasanas, or the imprints of all the things that we have done in the waking state, of either in this life or in the previous life, has all got imprinted in our subtle bodies. So what the brain is doing here is it's processing all that. The vasanas or the memories are brought up to the consciousness, and this jivatman watches all these things appearing in his consciousness. It's almost like a projection it's almost like a cinema where the Antaryamin picks up these vasanas and then displays this in the screen called the mind, and the jiva is watching it. So in this equation, jiva is a witness. He is watching what is being shown to him. In the dream state, we actually do not have any control of what we actually see in the dream. We may wish to do so, but the reality is the dreams is not under our control. We cannot decide a plot in our dream. And there comes the dependence of the jiva on the antaryamin, even in the dream state, what we call as swapnasthana. Okay. Now you have to move this equation more to the left. The third state of the jiva is when even the brain is, I won't say stopped functioning, but the brain has got minimal activity. The mind is at rest. The vasanas that have been coming up to the consciousness during the dream state, they've all subsided, they've all submerged. The mind is not very active. So in that state, what has happened is this jiva is also cutting itself off from the mind, the material mind. So in this situation, what you call as the dreamless state or the Sushupti Sthanaha, there is no awareness of the internal or the external world. Yeah, because this connection between the mind and the soul is being temporarily closed. It is not permanently closed. It's a temporary closure. So the jiva is not able to, it will not perceive any activities of the mind or the external world, is the classic definition of what a dreamless state is. But here is the puzzle. What is a dreamless state? It's all well and good for us to say, oh yeah, we are dreaming in one phase of sleep, and in the other phase of sleep we are not dreaming at all. What does it actually mean to say what is a dreamless state? Are we conscious in the dreamless state, or are we unconscious in the dreamless state? Yeah. So these are really basic questions, and not surprisingly, our rishis and philosophers actually deal with this problem of actually looking at what is this dreamless state. Now, if you do a lot of literature search on, the cognitive science that seems to be evolving within psychology and neurochemistry and neurosciences and so on, the cognitive science view is more and more gravitating towards the view of the rishis of the Upanishad era about what is this dreamless state. Okay, that is really interesting and revealing. And hopefully over the next few slides, I'll explain to you what is it that our rishis say about this state of consciousness of the jivas. And then I've again put that question, are the jivas actually conscious or not? That itself we do not know. We all go to sleep, then we dream, and then we go into this dreamless state, and suddenly we wake up and then go get on with our normal activities. Do we actually ask what the dreamless state is? That is what our rishis have done, and they've done a huge favor by actually bringing forth those concepts to us so that we could contemplate on those every day in our lives. Because at the end of the day, we go through this waking cycle, dream state and dreamless state every day. Yet we are so stupid that we don't even think about it, and we don't even look at it seriously, because there is profound philosophy there. So before we go into that state of Sushupti, I just want to open up the discussion. We have done this a number of times, but again, for the purpose of today's discussion, I think it's important to revise and recapitulate where is Brahman and where is this Jiva in this body. So in this Pindanda, where is Brahman and the Jiva? So I just want to open this up for discussion. The answer is all there in the slides, but I just want you to think about it and contribute here, please. Over the next 1 or 2 minutes, where do we think each one is? So 1 minute for you to unmute and answer those questions, please. Sudarshan.
Yeah, in the right atrium.
Okay, so that is your popularly held view. So you're holding on to that. Okay.
Popularly held mistaken belief.
Anybody else? Nita, Shushruth.
The jiva is in the Hriday Kamal or thymus.
Okay.
The guha.
And what about our Brahman fellow?
Brahman is everywhere. Everywhere
Thank
in the universe, including everywhere in our body, in various forms.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else?
Madhuji, this is Harish. I thought there was
Hi,
also
Harish.
a concept that Brahman is inside of that Jiva Guha. So there is a Guha, there's Jiva, and inside of that is Antaryami.
Yeah. Thank you, Harish. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we'll deal with that. Anybody else has any other thoughts? Any radical thoughts? Okay, so now the basics here. Nobody has seen the Jiva. Nobody has seen Brahman. Yeah, we all accept that. We believe we are the Jiva because we believe, because we are conscious, and consciousness is state of a sentient being, and Jiva is a sentient being. We believe that, we think that we are the Jiva, and we experience that consciousness, so we experience our Jivahood, if you like. But the ultimate evidence of where Brahman is, where Jiva is, we will have to go only to our Upanishads and Vedas, because Apaurushaya Veda is the final authority on this. Yeah, that we all have to accept. So if you accept that view, then you have to go and ask, what does the Upanishads say about where is Jiva and where is Brahman or Paramatma. So now if you read the Dasa Upanishads and if you read all the 10 Upanishads, so one thing about understanding these concepts is you will have to read at least, you'll have to go through those 10 Upanishads and then get the essence out of it. Okay, so what I have done here is I've kind of brought a synopsis here of key Upanishads and what they talk about, where Brahman is and where Jiva is. Okay, so if you go to Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahmavalli or Brahmandavalli and Bhriguvalli, that talks about the coverings of the jivas, and we are all familiar with this: Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manonmaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. The 5 coverings of the jivas, which is the material coverings. Now, as Sushrut rightly pointed out, this Brahman is not only pervaded the universe, but he's also pervaded this body. So if this body has 5 koshas, he must have pervaded the 5 koshas as well. So if you look at the Taittiriya Upanishad, that is what it talks about. That Aniruddha form, Pradyumna form, Sankarshana form, Vasudeva form, and the Narayana forms of the Supreme, they control and pervade the 5 koshas of the body, the material body. Okay. Now, what about the Jiva? So Harish pointed that out. What about the Jivatman himself or herself? Is there Brahman? If he is pervaded everywhere, then by definition, he must also have pervaded the Jivatman. So for that, there are very many Upanishads that talk about it. But the key Upanishad is Dahara Vidya. Dahara Vidya of Chandogyo Upanishad, 8th chapter. So I would encourage you to read that chapter carefully about Dahara Vidya, where it talks about where is this Brahman in the cave that Harish was mentioning about. So that is very clear. Ata yadidam asmin brahmapure daharam pundarikam. Okay, so the verses are all very clear. So what it basically says is Brahmapura. Brahmapura means the place where the Brahman is in the Pundarikam. Pundarikam means lotus, inverted lotus bud. Yeah, so the Rishi there describes that in your body there is an organ which is of the inverted lotus like, and in that inverted lotus is a small cave. In that cave is the Jivatman, and inside him is this Paramatman. Now, this inverted lotus bud has been linked with the thymus gland, because the thymus, the anatomy of the thymus is also like an inverted lotus lotus bud. So Sudarshan is right in the sense that the Supreme is in the right atrium. We have discussed this before. I entirely agree with him. He is not only in the right atrium, he is also in the left atrium, he is also in the right ventricle, he is also in the left ventricle, and he has pervaded everywhere. But when it comes to the concept of Jivatman, he occupies inside the Jivatman as is Antaryamin also. Yeah. So this concept you should hold in your thought, because there are 2 things that are operating here. One is the Jivatman and one is the body that is covering the Jivatman. Supreme has pervaded the body of the Jivatman through his 5 forms, which I listed there: Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Narayan. And in the Jiva, he is inside as an Antaryamin, and that Jiva is where Prashna Upanishad gives you the answer for that. Hridi hi esha atma. In that question, 6th question, there is this in the 3rd question, there is this discussion about where the Jivatman is. So Pippala the Rishi advises that the Jivatman is in this Hridaya Kamala. In that cave is the Jivatman. So Dahara Vidya tells you that in that Jivatman is this Paramatman. Okay, the same if you look at Taittiriya Upanishad again, this is this very famous verse that we have read so many times: Brahmavid apnoti param tadesha abhyukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. Yeah, so this Brahman is in that guha, the cave. Yeah, where is that cave? Guhayam is in the middle of your chest. Middle of your chest is where the thymus is. Yeah. Katha Upanishad also says the same thing. Anoraniyan mahato mahihan natma asya jantor nihito guhayam, in that cave. Gita chapter 15, we have done it so many times. Sarvasya cha aham hridi sannivishtaha. The Krishna has clearly told us there. So he is in that cave where the Jivatman is, and inside him he is there. Okay. So hridi sannivishtaha. So from these, we need to get this ingrained in our minds that the Jivatman is in this cave, Hridaya Kamala, the inverted lotus leaf, the thymus, the cave, the Jivatman is there, and inside him is the Brahman, but the Brahman is also pervaded the whole of the body. Yeah, not just this body, but all the infinite bodies that exist in the universe, he is pervaded, and in all the infinite Jivas, he is also pervaded. Whereas the Jivas influence is only in one body. When it occupies one body, its influence is only in one body, although it is subatomic, whereas Brahman is all pervasive. Okay? So these are core axiomatic principles on which the philosophy progresses. So now I'm going to pull you back to this concept of Sushupti, because having that idea that Jivatman is always placed only in the Hridaya Guha. He is not moving around the body. He is always in that cave, and he exerts his dependent influence on the body that he occupies. Okay. So now the question happens, what is this Sushupti then? And how is this Sushupti state of consciousness happening for the Jivas? So Sushupti, just to remind you again, is a state where the Jivatman has temporarily shut himself off or disconnected himself from the mind, the brain, and also the external world. Okay. So to understand what is this Sushupti state, what is this dreamless state, I want you to go to Chandogyo Upanishad first. Let's do this one of the most profound verses of the Chandogyo Upanishad that talks about this Sushupti state. Okay. So Chandogyo Upanishad, the 6th Adhyaya, as you know, is the dialogue between Uddalaka Arunihi and Shvetaketu, his son. Okay, so Shvetaketu, as you know, after 12 years as being an errand, he has then his father sends him to Gurukula. So he goes to Gurukula, and then he studies for 12 years, and then he comes back. Yeah. So when he comes back, the Shvetaketu fellow has got so much theoretical knowledge, and with theoretical knowledge, he's got so much arrogance that he has learned a lot, that he knows a lot. Okay. And he stands in front of his dad, not even prostrating before him, not even doing namaskara to him and paying respects. His view is, I have gone to the Gurukula for 12 years. I have learned everything about the Vedas. What is it that my dad will know? He knows much less than me. So why should I do namaskara to him? So that kind of ego comes into Shvetaketu. So this whole Chandogyo Upanishad starts off with the ego of Shvetaketu, thinking that he is the most knowledgeable person. That is an important concept to remember here. I'll come to that in 2 or 3 slides. So let's read this verse. It's a nice verse. Saha dvadarsha varsho upetya chaturvimshashita varshaha sarvan vedan aditya mahamana anuchanamani stabdayeyaya. Okay, that word is important. Stabdayeyaya. Stabda means like a pillar. He's standing there, not falling down at the feet of his dad. Tam ho pito uvacha. So at that time, the dad, Uddalaka Aruni, who is such a great philosopher of the Upanishad time, he asked him, Shvetaketo yennu somya idam mahamana anuchanamani stabdo asyuta tam adesha aprakshya yena ashrutam shrutam bhavati amatam matam avijnatam vijnatamiti. So he asks him a very, very foundational question. He asks him, once you've heard about it, it means that you've heard about everything else. Once you know about it, it means you've known about everything. Have they taught you in Kula? What is that thing? Once you know, means that you know everything. Okay. This is how this Chandogyo Upanishad, some point of Mandukya Upanishad, I think it'll be really good to spend a lot of weeks looking at the 6th chapter of Chandogyo Upanishad, which is the foundation of Vedantic philosophy. The three schools of Vedantas have diversified. They have diverse views on chapter 6, and they come up with philosophy, and it's really fascinating to look at this chapter from a very academic perspective, philosophical perspective, and of course, spiritual perspective. So he asks him this question. Our dear Swetaketu had no answers for that. So then there is a whole lot of philosophy that is discussed at that point. And then Uddalaka tells him about the cosmic creation. He talks to him about how the universe was created and so on. And there is a very important verse. It needs to be kept in mind. He would say, Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asid Yekameva Advitiyam. And then he talks about the creation of the universe. He'll talk about what's called as Trivrit Karana, Namarupa Vyakarana, the supreme majesty of Brahman, and illustrate the complete dependence of finite reality. So he'll talk about all these great things that Brahman has done. Then Uddalaka will come into the Pindanda and instruct his son how completely dependent the Jivas are for their existence. Yeah. To illustrate this point, Uddalaka takes Sushupti as an example. So to come to this concept of Sushupti, I had to give you this background to make the story interesting. So Uddalaka goes on like this. Uddalako arunihi Shvetaketum putram uvacha. Swapnantam me somya vijanihi iti. So he asked him the question, do you know about this Swapnantam? So we will have to see what does this Swapnantam means. So Swapna Antam is Swapnantam. Okay. Swapna Antam means at the end of the dream state. So at the end of the dream state, what happens? You get a dreamless state. So that is one meaning of the Swapnantam. Yeah. The other meaning is the sleep state. The deep sleep state itself is called Swapnantam. Yeah. So he puts this point, Swapnantam me somya vijanihi iti. Do you know what that Swapnantam state is? Do you know what the Sushupti state is, Swetaketu? And then he goes to give an explanation. And these are very profound verses. Yatra etat purushaha swapiti nama sata somya tada sampanno bhavati. Swam apito bhavati tasmadenam swapiti achakshate swam hi apito bhavati. Okay. But beautiful verses, we really need to dissect this to get to the bottom of what the Rishi Uddalaka is actually describing about the Sushupti state. So let's break it open. In the best traditions of Vedantic discourse and philosophy, as I said, Chadayanti iti chandamsi. So every word has to be broken, has to be split open to understand the meaning of this. And Uddalaka himself is doing us a favor here. He is actually opening all these verses for us, splitting it open, and is telling us what does that mean. So let us look at swapiti. So swap iti, he says, yatra etat purushaha swapiti nama. So what does that mean? Yatra, etad means what? This fellow who is in front of me. So this fellow who is sleeping, and I got a cartoon there for you. Yatra etad purushaha. So this purushaha is sleeping. What is he this? He is sleeping. That sleeping is called swapiti nama. This fellow on the bed, we all sleep. We all go on the bed and sleep. That is called swap. And he says, Yatra etat purushaha swapiti nama. Okay, he is sleeping, you are saying. Why are you saying he is sleeping? Swapiti. So for that swapiti, he actually goes on and explains what that swapiti is. He says, Sata somya tada sampanno bhavati. Okay, the sata there is important because the same sat is what he has started off right in the beginning. Sat eva somya idamagra asid ekameva advityam. That sat is the Brahman, okay, or the supreme person. So he says this sata somya tada sampanno bhavati. Swapiti, the deep sleep means this jiva is in the companion of the supreme. So that is the first level of definition. Sata somya tada sampanno bhavati. Okay. Now then he says swam apito bhavati. Okay. So what that means is, what is swam? Yeah. So the swapiti is divided into two. There are three components to swapiti. Swam, Apitaha and bhavati, if you combine together, it becomes swap iti. Okay, so you have to break open, and Uddalaka breaks it open for us and says swap iti equals swam apito bhavati. What is swam? Swam means swatantram. Swam is a short form abbreviation of swatantram. Swatantram means what? Independent. Independent means what? Independent being. Who is the independent being? We got famous verses from various works of Acharya like Tattva Sankhya, where he would say swatantram aswatantram chadvividam tattvamishyate swatantro bhagavan vishnuhu. He is the only one who is swatantram. Okay, so that we get the understanding in that swa component. Swa stands for swam. Swam means the supreme person who is independent. Apitaha is interesting. What is apitaha? Apitaha literally means in Vedic Sanskrit to enter into or to go into. So this jiva goes into this swatantram. He goes into it. Watch that word. Apitaha is enters into or goes into. Never here it says it becomes one with swam. It says it enters into swam. Entering into swam is different, and becoming one with swam is different. I am entering a house. Yeah. When I say I'm entering a house, it doesn't mean I become one with the house. That is not a correct interpretation of Upanishads and its grammar. If it was becoming one, so without going into the details, swam is an accusative case. If it becomes one with swam, the word should be svena. Svena apito bhavati. That is not what Uddalaka or the Veda is saying. The Veda is saying swam apito bhavati. Like how I enter into a house and I don't become one with the house. Similarly, the jiva enters into this swatantram. So that is why it is called swam apito bhavati. Okay, so I am going to pause there because, as I said, we will deal with it at some point in the future, dissecting this chapter 6. But here comes an interesting question for us to think about. So Uddalaka is saying in that deep state, the jiva actually enters into Brahman or is in close opposition with Brahman. Okay. Now there are other views there. The other views is in Sushupti state, Jiva becomes one with Brahman. Okay. So he becomes one with Brahman for a period of time, and then he'll come out of that oneness, and again he'll become a Jiva and go through samsara. Okay. Now we need to think about this. How would this fit into what Uddalaka is teaching his son Shvetaketu, and how would it fit into the philosophy of non-dualism here if we take that approach? The first problem there is, if it was going to be one, the word should be svena. It is not svena, it is swam. The other problem there is, if J and B, if Jiva and Brahman become one, then according to the philosophy of non-dualism, when you have Brahmatma Aikya, the external world should dissolve. Yeah. So has the external world dissolved when every day we go into the Sushupti state? I don't know. I don't think the external world has dissolved. Just because we are sleeping, there are all sorts of activities going on in the world. The world has not dissolved. It is still going on. The other interesting problem it poses is, if this jiva has become one with Brahman and it comes out, how can I be sure that it is the same jiva that has actually come out of Brahman and it is not a different jiva that has come out of Brahman? Yeah. Who is regulating all this? So those are all some of the interesting discussions that happens in core philosophy of the various schools, and they debate with each other looking at the intricacies of the verse. But for our purpose today, we are interested in what Uddalaka is saying about the state of Sushupti, and he's giving us a hint that it is swam apito bhavati. Okay, I hope you find that interesting. Then what Uddalaka does is, this is amazing. As soon as he spoke about this swam, the Sushupti state, swapiti or Sushupti state, his son is not very convinced, or he is not sure, and so immediately what Uddalaka does in his classic teaching is, he takes metaphors and illustrations. he takes up illustrations to advise or give proper teaching to his son. So he goes to the first example of the famous verses of Chandogyo Upanishad. So he says, you know how this Sushupti state is? It is like this. Sayata Shakunihi Sutrena Prabodho Disham Disham Patitva Anyatra Ayatanam Malabdva Bandhanameva Upashrayate Evameva Kalu Somya Tan Mano Disham Disham Patitva Anyatra Ayatanam Malabdva Pranameva Upashrayate Prana Bandhanam Hi Somya Manahiti. Okay, so this is again an amazing verse from Uddalaka giving an illustration. So Shakuni means a bird. Okay, Sutra means it's tied with this rope to a small post or a pillar. So this is our state in our existence, and we have dealt with this before. So this post is like tied to this Brahman, and he is dependent on the Brahman, and he's tied through this concept called pranaha, and he's tied to jiva. So the jiva, what it does during the waking state, it does not even realize that it is constantly, this bird called the jiva does not realize that he is tied to this post, but he thinks he is an independent bird, and he is flying all over the place. He is flying to the range in which his sutra is allowing him, but still he doesn't realize that, but he still flies around like a headless chicken, literally, all day. And also in the dream, he is flying, and eventually he gets tired, and then he rests. Where does the bird rest? It comes to the same pillar, near the pillar, exhausted, and it rests. Okay, such is the situation of the Sushupti state, where the jiva during the waking state and the mind, the dream state, he is gone all over the place. He can't find any happiness. He is constantly running around. So he comes down and he rests next to this prana. Okay, that is a classic example of Sushupti, and that is what we do every day after having a hard day's work. And after having watched the BBC News and whatever else, we go to sleep, and in the dream again we are agitated. We are tired by then we said enough is enough. And then we go to this prana or the Supreme Brahman and rest with him. And that is the deep state. Okay. Note the words here. They are all very significant. Uddalaka puts manaha, pranaha, not just randomly. What does manaha means? Manaha means not the mind. The Vedic rishis are much more cleverer than what we think they are. Look at manaha and look at manushya. Okay, so who is going to tell me what is the meaning of manushya? We all call ourselves as manushya, right? So what does manushya actually mean? The English word man, of course, comes from Manushya. So what does Manushya mean? I'm going to pause for a minute. Can somebody contribute here, please?
Somebody
Sure.
guided by Manas.
Okay, yeah, somebody guided by Manas, but okay, what is Manas?
Manas is something, which gets attracted to anything lower, higher, anything, it just goes anything, maybe more lower side of material and all those things. So it gets
Yeah,
attracted towards that.
yeah. Okay, fine, Sudarshan. So ideally, the jiva should actually be directing the mind rather than the other way around. Okay, so but I take your concept. I buy your concept. Anybody else? Okay, so Manushya comes from the word Mananashilaha. So Mananashilaha equals Manushya. What does Mananashilaha means? Mananashilaha means that thing that can actually think and can think rationally and can think properly using its instruments like manas, buddhi and all that, and it can make a decision. We all remember that Katha Upanishad, right? Manaha pragraham evacha. Yeah, so this jiva holds the mind, and then it will control through buddhi and everything else and do its transactions of life. So manaha primarily means jiva, because it is the jiva which is the manana shilaha. And that is why we are also called manushyas. We are called manusya because not because we're in a body which is made of homo sapien body. No, we are inside, we are this jiva which thinks. That is why we are called manana shilaha. Pranaha means primarily pranasya pranaha. You remember our verse in Keno Upanishad, pranasya pranaha. So what is prana means? Anacheshtayam. He who gives volition to things is the pranaha. Who gives volitions to everything in the universe is pranasya pranaha, which is the supreme being himself who gives that volition for everything and also controls everything. And how does he do that? In one school of Vedanta, it is through this concept called Mukhya Pranaha, who is the string that holds the Jiva. So this Pranaha is also significant. It not only denotes Mukhya Pranaha, because remember in Sushupti, our metabolism may be low, but still we are breathing, right? That breathing mechanism is still happening. Our dreams might have gone, but still we are breathing. How are we breathing? Because that Pranaha is there and we are breathing. The pranaha is under the control of pranasya pranaha, who is the supreme being celebrated in Keno Upanishad. So this manaha and pranaha there actually signifies the jiva and Brahman by Uddalaka's position. So here, if you look at it, the jiva, when it is in Sushupti, comes to the post and rests there. It doesn't become the post. The illustration is very clear and important. So an illustration should be used if there is a philosophy that is being explained, the illustration should actually explain that philosophy. So if you look at this Sushupti state, it's very clear. It says the bird goes and takes ayatanam labdva. It takes its abode or rest next to the pillar that to which it's tied. It doesn't say it cannot, the bird cannot become the pillar. So the illustration is also important. So then, of course, our Uddalaka, then he will say this, then it's a Saya Esha Anima, Aitadatmyam, Idam Sarvam, Tat Satyam, Atma, Tattvamasi, Shvetaketo, Iti Bhuyama, and it goes on. So that whole concept of Tattvamasi that comes in here, I am going to skip that slide because we will do that on another day. And we have done it when we were doing Brahma Sutras. If you remember in Samanvaya Adhyaya, we spent some time about what does this Tattvamasi actually mean. It cannot be, this Brahman bird and Jiva bird cannot be the same. Okay, so it is a Lakshana, it is a metaphor. And we discussed about the rules of metaphor and all. So we'll discuss that on another day. But essentially, I want to just introduce this idea about when you say Tat and when you say Tvam Asi, when you say Tat, yeah, Tat, the vibhaktis, as you know in grammar, there are 7 vibhaktis. Yeah. And the vibhaktis can be in English language is nominative case, vocative case, accusative case, instrumental case, dative case, ablative case, genitive case, and locative case. The English language has just nicked it from Sanskrit grammar. It is exactly the same. Shabda vibhaktis. So the Tat has got 7 forms. Tat adina tvamasi, Tat sadrishya tvamasi, Tasmin tvamasi, Tasmad tvamasi, Tasmai tvamasi, Tasya tvamasi, Tat prati tvamasi. Yeah. So that is how you read the Chandogyo Upanishad, the sayings of Uddalaka, rather than skimming the surface and coming with an airy-fairy philosophy. So when you go to the deep grammar of these verses, use vibhaktis and then apply what is called lakshana to one term, not lakshana to both terms simultaneously. The meanings then becomes very important. So this bird is dependent on Brahman. This bird, which is Jiva, is similar to Brahman. This bird is there because of Brahman. This bird is there for him. This bird belongs to him. This bird is alive because of him. Yeah. So when you take those approaches to this verse, it's very clear that Sushupti state is informing us of the potential dependence of the jiva in Brahman, in that state where it has completely disconnected itself from the mind and the external world. Okay. So yes, so I had to give you all this background information to actually tell you what is Varuna telling us here. So that is what you need to have in mind before you approach Mandukya Upanishad, this particular verse. About Sushupti, we should have done all the other background reading about this. Where is the Jiva? Where is the Brahman? What has Uddalaka told Shvetaketu about this position? What is that illustration of the bird and the pillar and what it means? Once you have that background information, then what Varuna tells us makes a lot of sense. So he is now saying, you Lord, you also control the third state of the consciousness of the Jivas. Yatra Shuptaha, na kanchana kamam kamayate, na kanchana swapnam pashyati, tat shushuptam is what he is defining. So what does that mean? Yatra Shupto, where he slept. Okay. What is that sleeping state? Na kanchana kamam kamayate. That is the state where there is no desires. Because your indriyas are shut, your mind is shut, you do not have any desires. It is a desireless state. That is the first position. Why is Varuna saying that? Because in our waking state, our whole waking state is full of desires. And because our desires are not fulfilled, we go round and round in circles with various problems, as how Krishna has said in the Gita. Dhyayate vishayan pumsaha sangastesu upajayate. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Okay. Kamaha krodo abhijayate. And then you go down in this material pool in that Jagrati state. Whereas in Sushupti state, there is no desire because you've disconnected yourself from the external world. Na kanchana kamam kamayate. Na kanchana swapnam pashyati. You are not even seeing the dreams. So that verse is fairly easy for us to understand. So a desireless state and a dreamless state is tat sushuptam. Okay. Now that sushuptam state is a state of total darkness according to the Upanishads. So what is a total darkness? It is a state of total ignorance on the part of jivas. Think about this. Tonight you will be in Sushupti state and you will be in this. Yeah, it's a total darkness. Yeah, but think about the darkness, and I've given you an illustration here. Think about a person who's in a dark room or is in a dark forest. What are all the things he could potentially be aware of? Awareness of the self. A person in the dark, deep forest will be aware of the self. This is an important point. Yeah. So it may be dark. I might have switched off the light in the house, or I might have switched off the light in the room. I might have switched off the table lamp. I might have closed my eyes. But still, I'm not going to forget myself, the self. So in this situation in the forest, this person will be aware of the awareness of the self will be there. He will be aware of the darkness around him. He will be aware of the space he is occupied, and he will be aware of the time in this dark forest that he is there. This is an illustration of how that experience would be, but I'm just going to suggest hold on to that thought, because our Sushupti state is a little bit more interesting than just a person in a deep dark forest. Okay, where is that place? So our person Varuna is saying, the jivas are in that completely ignorant state where they are not aware of everything. That state of total unawareness is also brought about by the Supreme Person, who's where is he placed? What is his sthana, as it's called? So he says, Shushupti sthanaha yeki bhutaha prajnana gana eva anandamayohi anandabuk cheto bukaha prajnaha tritiyaha padaha. Okay. Sushupti sthanaha, he takes a Sushupti sthana. Where is the Sushupti sthana? It's in the thymus gland. Where is the thymus gland? Anahata chakra. Where do we get this evidence about this Brahman being in the thymus gland, middle of the heart? Dahara Vidya of Chandogyo Upanishad that I informed you before. Okay, that is the Sushupti sthanaha. Okay, now what is the Sushupti sthanaha? He goes on to define that in that Sushupti sthanaha, the form of the Supreme is Eki Bhutaha. I'll come to that a bit later, but if you remember Jagrati sthana and Swapna sthana, he said Shaptangaha Yekona Vimshati Mukaha. Yeah, 19 faces and 7 extremities. Whereas here he says Eki Bhutaha, only one with many forms. What is he called? He's called Prajnaha. But why is he called Prajnaha? He qualifies that first. So he says, Sushupti Sthanaha Eki Bhutaha Prajnana Gana Eva. So this Gana means Jivas, groups. Gana means group. Group of what? Group of Jivas. Jivas of what? Covered by total ignorance that we just discussed now. This Prajna, so this person, he covers them with total ignorance. Why is it called Prajnaha? Look at the word Prajnaha. Pra plus Agnaha. Previously, he has said Bahihi Prajnaha. So, Jagrati state is awareness of the external world. Dream state is Antaha Prajnaha, awareness of the inner state. Whereas in this state, the supreme being is defined as pra agnaha because he gives total ignorance to the souls, that he suppresses their awareness of so many things. Okay, but at the same time, although he is in that cave giving total ignorance, he is also the person who also gives them prajna. So on all those two angles, he gets named as prajnaha. So he is there controlling the jiva, controlling the total ignorance. Although he is controlling, he is giving total ignorance to the jivas in the state. What is this prajnaha's original position? So he says, Ananda Mayohi Anandabuk Cheto Mukaha. So there are two components here. Anandamayaha Cheto Mukaha. That is how Prajnaha is defined. So this God has got two primary qualities. Anandamayaha Cheto Mukaha. Cheta means jnana. Jnana means knowledge. Mukaha means mukyaha. Mukyaha means the most superlative knowledge. Anandamayaha means full of eternal bliss. So he is jnana. Anandamaya is the essential qualification of Prajnaha, and this Prajnaha controls the state of total ignorance of the Jivas. But here is a twist that I've got here. In this person who is dark in the dark space, I told you that he will be aware of the sphere of ignorance, he'll be aware of darkness and so on. So if you equate that with the Jivas, here is the twist that the Upanishad says is, think about this. It needs a little bit of rumination and contemplation. Non-awareness of self, awareness of ignorance, awareness of space, awareness of time, nirbhaya and nirdukha. So those are all the essential qualifications or criteria. Why does he say that? Because although he is in close proximity of the Supreme, he does not know he is in the close proximity of the Supreme. That is his first ignorance. Yeah. But when he wakes up, when he is in the Sushupti state, he does not know all this. But when he wakes up, then he realizes, I had a very long, deep, refreshing sleep for this long on this bed in this room. He is able to recollect all this. So on those evidences, our Rishi says that non-awareness of all this is a state of the Sushupti. Yeah. So why is that important? The reason being, in Jagrati Sthana, what the Supreme does is he gives both Sukha and Dukkha to the Jivas. In Swapna Sthana also we get Sukha and Dukkha. Whereas in Sushupti Sthana, which is a state of complete disentanglement from the material world, where you have no bhaya, you are a nirbhaya state, nirdukkha state, because you are in close opposition to the Supreme. Although you're not aware you are not in opposition to the Supreme, that is what has happened in the Sushupti state, is what the Upanishad Rishis are telling it. Okay. So in that state, what does the Jiva actually enjoy? Ananda book. He enjoys only Sukha. He enjoys Sukha during Sushupti, but he is still not aware when he is in Sushupti that actually he is enjoying Sukha. He needs to wake up and then realize, yes, I was in blissful sleep. We use that term quite regularly, not randomly. It has actually got a philosophical, deep philosophical meaning as well. So just to bring it all together. So we got Agna Chakra, we got Vishuddha Chakra, we got Anahata Chakra, and Vishwa form of the Supreme in the Anahata Chakra through the pineal gland controls the waking state. Tejasa form of the Supreme in the Vishuddha Chakra through the thyroid gland, maintains the dream state. Prajna form of the Supreme, through Anahata Chakra, placed in the thymus gland, controls the dreamless state of the Supreme. Okay. Now a question comes, are these forms, Vishwa, Tejasa, Prajna forms of the Lord, same or different? So I'm going to pause there for a minute for a quick discussion on that. Do we think these forms of the Supreme are the same or they are different?
Supreme is the same, but I think the forms are different.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else has a different view?
Maybe if I say that, like in ocean, there is a wave and there is a droplet. So how you conceive this, but in the metaphorical way, this is an elevated state. So from you go from dreamless state to the dream state and then wakeful state.
Okay, thank you, Pragnesh. So let's go to Veda Vyasa, what he has to say about it. Yeah, so we can have our own views here, and some of it are valid, but let's see what our Veda Vyasa says about it. Because as I said, the Jagrati state, dream state, and Sushupti state are of deep, profound philosophical significance in Sanatana Dharma and particularly in Vedanta. And Veda Vyasa is our founding father. So in Brahma Sutra, in the third Adhyaya, he is actually given a lot of description on this Sushupti dream and how is it happening and so on. Veda Vyasa talks about this in great detail. We don't have time to go through all this, but I've just put one sutra there. He says, so he takes Vishwa, Tejas and Prajna form, and there is a question, are they different forms or all this, or are they same? So Veda Vyasa resolves that problem. Nastanatopi parasya ubayalingam sarvatrahi. Okay, 3 to 11. So do that reference and do your homework as to what Veda Vyasa says. Stanaha. What does the sthana means? These three sthanas. Okay. Sthanato api parasya. Para means what? God. Parasya. Ubaya means what? Two. Linga means it's qualities or properties. Two properties. He said no. Sudarshan, there is your answer. What Veda Vyasa has said. Sthanasopi parasya na ubayalingam. Sarvatra means everywhere. Yeah, the form of the Supreme and his qualities inside Sudarshan's Jiva and my Jiva and in everybody's Jiva is the same, because he is Satchit Ananda everywhere simultaneously. Yeah, so there is no difference between Vishwa, Tejasa and Prajna form when you look at the Supreme Being as a Jnananandamaya, which was described in the Sushupti state. So Brahma Sutra is Vishwatomukha, as you know. So using this, you have to apply this to everywhere. Krishna is not different from Rama or Narasimha or Varaha or whatever. They are all the same. In fact, the nails of Narasimha are the same as Narasimha himself. There is no parts in the Supreme. There is no, it is an Akhanda Padartha. And every aspect of this is Sachitananda. And how is that possible? It's because of what our rishis call as Achintya Adbhuta Shakti of the Supreme. His extraordinary superlative power. Although he appears to be in different places, he is actually the same simultaneously everywhere. Okay, so that is his supreme power, is what the Upanishads say. So that is another concept I thought I'll bring in, and also introduce this idea that actually our father Veda Vyasa has actually dealt with the dream state, Jagrati state, and Sushupti state in great detail. Okay, so coming to the final bits of my slides for today. So we have to go back to our Mandukya Upanishad and our famous parrots who have been not in the picture for about 3 to 4 months. So I have to bring it back again. Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya Samana Vriksham Parishashva Jate Tayor Anyaha Pippalam Swadati Anashnan Anyaha Abhichakashiti. Beautiful words from Mandukya, as we all know. So what is it saying? There is this tree called the material world, which could even Pindan. And inside in that cave, there are two birds that are sitting, the Jiva bird and the Brahman bird. The Jiva bird is looked away. He's looking away from Brahman all the time. He's got that ignorance. He doesn't even know that this fellow is next to him. He is looking at the external world and he's eating all these fruits in these bitter fruits in this tree and assuming these are most sweet. But then he does not find happiness. Yeah, so that is what this bird undergoes. He experiences all these things in the material world, during the waking state, dream state, dreamless state. And it is not just linear. You can go from wakeful state, you go to dream, then you go to dreamless, then you come back to dream state, then you can go to wakeful, or from dreamless state you can directly go to wakeful state. So describes our Upanishads of the sleep cycle. This is amazing stuff, how they describe the sleep cycle. And in all these various states, this Jiva is assuming he thinks he's enjoying stuff, and he's suffering in these two states, dream and wakeful state. And this fellow Brahman bird is just looking and then giving him a sarcastic smile and saying, what is this fellow doing in his life? Yeah. Does he not realize I am actually sitting very next to him and I'm actually controlling all his affairs in his life? Why can't he look back at me and provide and understand me, know about me? And once he knows about me, once he has the jnana, the Atharva jnana, then he will get the devotion and bhakti towards me. And then he'll realize that he is eternally dependent on me. When he reaches that state, then he will find eternal happiness and bliss. Why is he struggling around this material world like this? So the reason why I have put this state is Varuna is talking about all this Jagrati state and dream state and Sushupti state, not because they are scientifically interesting. Yes, they are. But from a philosophical and spiritual perspective, they give us profound lessons to us. Here is a day-to-day experience of all of us as human beings, yet we do not even contemplate on this in our everyday life. We do not contemplate this situation of ours. We just get up, we just go and do our work, we watch TV, we just sleep, we dream, and then we have a dreamless sleep. Again, we wake up and do the same thing again and again. Every day that we lose, every day the sun sets is one step closer to death, as our philosophers say. So every day that passes, one needs to be very careful and contemplate on this every day, on this fundamental truth of Jiva's eternal dependence on the Supreme Being. So to finish it off, now you may ask, what is the difference between Sushupti and Moksha then? Sushupti also, he is in close embrace of the Supreme. In moksha state, also in the liberated state, the jiva is in close proximity of the Supreme. But here is the difference. Here, this jiva bird has actually looked away from Brahman, whereas in moksha state, he is always in close proximity and eternally dependent on Brahman, but with full knowledge that he is always eternally dependent and in close proximity of the Supreme. Yeah, that is that conscious state, the fourth conscious state of the jivas, which is called as the Turiya state of consciousness, which Mandukya Upanishad then discusses next. Yeah, so that we will continue next week. But I hope over the last 3 to 4 weeks, I've given you a sequence of thought of Varuna as to how he takes us from Brahmanda to Pindanda and gives an example of our day-to-day life. And then he goes to the deepest philosophies of what is this Turiya state, what is this Moksha state. So hope you will join me next week to have a discussion on that. But what I have also done, what we have also done today is like how we did last week. It's all well and good of me talking about what our Upanishads 5,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago have spoken about the deep sleep or Sushupti. But what is the current scientific perspective on deep sleep phenomenon? Everybody is gravitating to the knowledge of the Upanishads. And I'm grateful for Dr. Neeta Kulkarni ji, who's a pediatrician and also has an interest in these areas. And she is going to give us a brief overview of what the current scientific perspective on deep sleep phenomenon is. Neeta.
Thank you, Madhu. That was amazing, the whole lecture. And it's amazing to know how much they knew about sleep in the past. So as Madhu just mentioned that I'm a pediatrician, so I'm not a neuroscientist, so I won't go through all the very detailed scientific things, but let's see some brief summary of dreamless sleep or deep sleep. So next slide, Madhu. So we had seen this slide previously on one of Madhu's slides, the 4 stages of sleep. So there are 2 main ones, like what we call REM or rapid eye movement sleep and NREM sleep. And again, Devalji had also gone through this. So I won't touch any other parts like the dream part of it. So the NREM stage 3 is what we call as deep stage. So they used to be classified as 4 stages, but now they're classified as 3. So it is 3rd stage of non-rapid eye movement stage that we call as deep sleep. Okay, in this sleep, our blood pressure and our breathing rate, it drops, and our muscles also relax. So that is the deep sleep. Next slide, Madhu. It's also called as slow wave sleep. So the important bit, some more information is that it peaks just before puberty, so in children, and it starts decreasing. The amount of deep sleep that we have decreases with age. Okay, and in adults, 15% of total sleep time is deep sleep. So it's only about 15% that we are nearer God or near Bhagavanta, as Madhuji has mentioned. The key point is it helps us repair and regenerate our tissues, and it's also beneficial for our memory consolidation and also immunity. And if you remember, Madhuji had mentioned about thymus, and thymus has close link to immunity there. One more important point, which is not there here in the bullet points, is that if we don't get deep sleep one night, we have to compensate later on. So we have to get that some other time. So you all might have experienced that if you don't sleep well, you're tired next day, or you'll sleep more next day. Okay, so next, sorry, don't move the slide yet, Madhu. I just want to ask everyone, can anyone define consciousness? I know you might have seen the slides, but still, if you have any different definitions, please let me know. Can anyone tell me what consciousness is?
We had somebody raised. Pragnesh, yeah.
According to the common neuroscientific concept, awareness of self and surrounding.
Yes.
That's the simplest definition accepted.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. Awareness of self.
Awareness of self. Okay. That is fine. Yeah, we'll move on to the next slide. So yes, it's awareness of internal and external existence. Now this is from Wikipedia. And then the next one is state of being awake, thinking, and knowing what is happening around you. And this is from the Cambridge Dictionary. So that is what is defined as consciousness generally, that we are aware of. So there is one article I would really like everyone to go and look at, and I've provided a link there, which talks about dreamless sleep and consciousness, and it has included these Indian or the Vedantic views as well in there. And it actually beautifully combines the Vedantic views and the scientific views. So it's a beautiful article, and it's easy to understand. It doesn't have too many of the scientific words or explanation, so it's easy to understand. So next slide. Okay, so that was our what we know of consciousness. But how do neuroscientists define consciousness? Okay, so it is this is the definition there on the slide. Content of consciousness is a reportable content. Say, for example, I've seen a chair, and I say, okay, I'm seeing a chair, then I remember it, yeah, and then I'm able to convey that to someone else, that I have seen this, and this is how a chair looks. So I hold it in my memory, and then I tell someone else. Okay, so that is consciousness, that you are able to grasp all that and then report back. And that's when you're like conscious, you're able to do all these activities. So when studies were done, scientific studies were done, what they did was they woke people up in their deep sleep, okay? And they asked them what was going on in their mind. So then they could not report what was going on. And because they could not report what was going on, they thought that they were not conscious. Does that make sense? Yeah. And maybe they didn't report, they can't remember, and what they didn't ask was the quality of sleep, so how they felt or what was happening. Now, the problem with this type of study is they're subjective. What people can remember, maybe they can't remember. Does it mean that if they can't remember, if someone can't remember, does that mean that nothing is happening, or is there nothing to report, or is it not that they're not able to describe it? So we're not sure. So again, it's not very clear whether this definition is correct, or whether the evidence that is there, is that enough to describe that sort of consciousness. So that is what I wanted to say today. And science, again, we don't have answers for everything. Most of the time when research is done, we have more questions than answers. So that is one thing. One more thing I would like to mention is there are studies that were done on people who have training or trained in meditation, for example, Buddhist monks, and they found a different wave pattern, sleep wave pattern in them. And they also reported that it was more of peaceful sleep that they reported. So it can be trained, mind can be trained to sleep in a different, or mind can be trained at how to control it. So that's all I have to say today. But it's amazing that our rishis understood this many, many years ago. So that's all I want to end with. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you. They were like, and I think it was a good one. Today only I came to know, I mean, because NREM, there's no more stage 3 and stage 4, is it? It's only stage 3.
That's correct, yes, yeah.
Is it because there's no much difference between stage 3 and previous stage 4?
Yes, I think so. That's the main thing.
Okay.
This is the American Academy.
Okay. So that's good to know. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So one thing, Neetaji, thank you very much for that.
To do with the sleep spindles. The sleep spindles which come on in the electrical activity, that is not there in 3 but is there in 2. That's the difference, I think.
Sorry, they will say that again.
So in the non-REM sleep, it is slow activity, but you have a burst of very fast activity. It's called a sleep spindle.
Yes, that is there in the NREM. Yeah.
So the original 4 stages, that sleep spindle stage was there, whereas now they are, I don't know, they think that it is slow waves but with sleep spindles. That's the slight difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, so that's good. Anita, thank you very much for that overview of that. So one thing that caught my attention was the stage 3 of NREM sleep, which is the deep sleep, where if you take the classic definition of consciousness, it actually does not fit that bill. It is an unconscious state. Is that right? So you actually classically are not aware of the external world. Yeah, you may be aware of the self, but you are positively unaware at that point of time, but you recollect it only after you wake up. So that is very intriguing and interesting, because that fully fits with what the rishis view on the deep sleep state is, where you have total ignorance of everything around you and so on. So to me, it looks like that stage 3 NREM equals deep sleep, or the Sushupti of our Vedic rishis.
That's right, yeah. Because you can have dreams in the NREM 1 and 2. So if you, although it is dream, so that is the only one with where there are no dreams.
Yeah. Mohan Pandey has raised his hands. Mohan.
Yeah, thanks. So Neetaji, I have a question. So are there any studies saying that if we are in deep sleep, then if there is a needle pricking, would people experience that or not? So as in the what is the level of so-called unconsciousness in deep sleep?
Good question. We discussed this as we were actually preparing this thing, and Sushupti and myself. So, and there's also one study in that particular review paper that I've put a link there, is about response to stimulation in deep sleep. When they've done EEG studies, they found that these stimulus is localized. It produces a local reaction, and it is very short duration. Whereas if you're awake, that stimulus will be far more widespread. Does that make sense in the brain? And that is called as large scale integration. And that happens in the awake state rather than in deep sleep state. And what they are saying is this large scale integration is required to be conscious, to be awake state. Now you can question. Yeah, sorry. I hope I've answered the question.
I suppose in some way the question is if you get it.
Sorry, say that again, Mohanji.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was contrasting it with dream state. So dream state, if you see, for example, that if somebody pours water on you, if you are having a dream, in that dream somehow it gets integrated. And within the dream also you will find that you are getting in a lake, or there is rain, or something will happen. And that stimuli will get integrated in dream. So that's where I was trying to contrast that if you are in deep sleep but not in dream, and there is external stimuli, then what happens?
Yeah. One more thing is if that external stimuli is enough to wake you up, you are sort of dazed and don't remember anything for very short duration. And then you might remember, oh, it's me, and wake up. But specific to needle prick, no, I don't know any particular one. But if it's an alarm or something else external that wakes you up.
Thank you.
Neeta, can I just come in? So my guru would say, when you are in deep sleep, if your deep sleep, what is happening? The jiva is in the middle of the chest and Brahman is also there, and you're in close opposition and in complete deep sleep. So my guru would say, when you're sleeping, even if there is a king cobra which comes and takes a hood and sits on your chest, you will not even be aware that the king cobra is there, and you will still be blissfully sleeping, because your sense of touch contact is gone. At the same time, you have nirbhaya in that state. You're fearless in that state. So even a king cobra sitting on you, you will not be aware of it. Is a classic example that's given.
I think the level of stimulus needed will be higher, isn't it? So if it's a real big fire alarm, I guess you'll wake up from deep sleep. I hope so. That we will.
So it's a fear or fright, isn't it? So even that. So one of the other things we haven't discussed is the transition from one state to another. Yeah, from waking state to dream state to dreamless sleep back to the waking state. How does the regulation actually happens? We will all be amazed to realize that Veda Vyasa has actually discussed that in the Brahma Sutra, and he talks about who regulates and the transition. How does it happen? How does one come out from the sleep? So that is also in the third Adhyaya. So I would encourage all of us to read the third Adhyaya about the science of sleep.
I guess there's so much to learn, and I don't know if we have answers. That's amazing. I think we're learning a lot. So,
any other questions for today?
I think there was.
I wanted to ask one question. Just hold on. Neetaji, you mentioned that if you can't go to deep sleep, you can meditate and learn.
So no, what I meant was to get into that stage, like how the Buddhist monks can be trained to change their or EEG pattern or the sleep patterns. So if they're trained, and it takes a lot of time to train to change that.
Is it to be in that state in the waking state, or is it to be like that in the deep sleep state?
I think deep sleep state, yeah.
For deep sleep state, you have to learn by meditation, is it?
Means meditation changes the way the brain is functioning in
sleep pattern changes.
Yeah. That's my understanding. It's correct, yeah.
So what do we meditate upon? This meditation we all call. What is this meditation?
Yeah, a good question. Sorry, I had no idea. I think that's one thing on my list. I think I should start learning how to meditate.
Madhuji, can you please tell what is meditation?
Sheila ji, I'm just going to take refuge in what Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita here about the meditation state. I'm going to keep the Buddhist meditation slightly aside here, and I'm going to focus on what Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita. He gives two sthithis, okay? Sampragnata and asampragnata sthiti. For dhyana, which is meditation, Krishna has given us two. One is sampragnata sthiti, and the other one is asampragnata sthiti. Sampragnata sthiti is where you focus on an object or an idea or a thought or a lamp or an image of a deity, and you focus your mind on that continuously. That is samprajna. So you're having sampurna prajna of that object that you're focused on, so that all other thought processes are all other distractions are not there. So that is the sampragnata sthiti. But Krishna tells us you have to go even beyond that. You have to go to what is called asampragnata sthiti, where even that thought also should go, and your thought should, the ocean, the thought, if you take the thought as your ocean and the waves are the things that come to consciousness, even that has to become still. Then the Jiva Swarupa will then open up and then go inside and see the third eye concept that we discussed before. So that is how I understand the dhyana from what Krishna or Veda Vyasa have told us about sampragnata and asampragnata. So from that, you start somewhere. So you start with sampragnata sthiti, or you focus on an object or an idea or a deity or even a flame
Mantra.
or a lamp that is usually used.
Even a mantra, you mean?
Yeah, mantra, anything. But then you go beyond that. And then, so why I brought this is in the Karma Yoga chapter, Krishna says, it is only at that place when you are in asampragnata sthiti, you don't have to do any karma. But in all other states, you are doing karma all the time. But he takes this as an example.
But is it what you say you transcend these states? Is it what does it
you
mean?
Transcend, your mind should completely go blank, as my guru says, blank your mind. When you blank your mind, then the Jiva Swarupa gets activated, and then that is the asampragnata sthiti. I don't know how many of us, how many in this universe or in this world have reached that state. But whatever else that we are doing, I'm pretty sure it is a sampragnata sthiti. We are just focused on a mantra or something, and we are just getting our mind focused so that we don't get distracting thoughts appearing in our consciousness.
Just to keep
so
your mind.
Has got,
yeah.
Thank you, Shilaji. Deval has got a question, or is it a legacy hand?
No, I was wanting to ask, sorry, I was wanting to ask another question, but just the question related to what you've just said is, friends who do deep meditation, they say, they use the word sakshatkar. So you have to do meditation till you have sakshatkar. And is that when you see a jiva or you see a Brahman? Well, sorry, that's another question that came to my mind. But the first question was, what was the difference in sort of what would be the Vedic explanation for a difference between Sushupti and a coma state of mind?
Yeah, so don't worry, that will come in the next verse. So when the definition of Turiya state is given, what is a coma state, what is daydreaming state, so all those things are covered there. Well, so if that's all right with you, so we can touch upon this next week. And the first question that you said, sakshatkara, I think that's absolutely right. That is equivalent to the asampragnata sthiti. Yeah.
Just Madhu, just one quick one about coma and the sleep, deep sleep bit. I found in one of the articles was sleep is rapidly reversible behavioral, quiescence compared to coma or anesthesia. This is rapidly reversible. So that's the one.
Yeah. Oh, that's thanks.
Harish has asked a question in the chat box.
Yeah, Harish, then we have Mohan and then Pragnesh. So shall we go with Harish? Sudarshan, do you want to read out the question?
I'll read now. Okay. First of all, okay. Paresh is asked, in this deep sleep, can it have an influence on our future actions?
Deep sleep, absolutely yes. because our future action, so as Neetaji mentioned, deep sleep is very essential for our physiological state of our body and mind. So whatever actions that we are going to do would depend on how our ability to do that action, Paresh. So in that sense, I think Neetaji would agree with me that deep sleep is essential for our future actions. And more importantly, Paresh, the deep sleep, if you every day in your life, you are conscious and mindful that there is a supreme being behind all this, who is running all this, including your deep sleep state, your dream state, and your waking state. If you become very mindful of that, then this whole process of doing karma yoga, as described in Gita in several chapters, will all then make sense. Yeah, it is all very easy to say, oh, do your action, but don't reap the benefits, etc., etc. But once you become very mindful of this key concept that Varuna has told us in our day-to-day life, then once you impregnate this into your mind, practicing karma yoga will actually become very beautiful, I feel.
Yes, Madhu, I think, yeah, completely agree there. If you don't sleep, I mean, I see children with behavioral problems and they don't sleep well at all at night. So it has an impact on next day's work. I mean, as we have seen, if we are awake or we're traveling, we can't really, and we've been awake during travel, we can't really concentrate next day very well. So if we can't concentrate, we are irritable, so that will impact on next day's work. And if children are not sleeping all the time, for days, weeks, months, that impacts on their concentration and their learning next day. So definitely deep sleep is important for our future actions.
Harish has got a question. I have, and I'll read it aloud. I had one. Can you please explain opposition to Brahman during deep sleep? So forgive my accent, Harish. It's apposition. Apposition is what I meant. Apposition is close to Brahman. So Shastras basically say in Sushupti, Jiva sits on the thigh of Brahman, and then he rests on the thigh of Brahman, like how Prahalada did on Narasimha. Similarly, the Jivas rest on the thigh of Brahman is what the Shastras say. So it is sitting close to him. So
Okay,
I hope that
good,
clarifies
thanks.
your question.
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Mohan has got a hand raised. Mohan.
Yes, so I was just on the question of how do we train our mind to sleep, on that question, and what do we meditate on? I was just wondering if somebody has any experience in experimenting with chanting of Om in different states. So last week we talked about, or week before was how to meditate on Om, what's the right way of even pronouncing. So the question I have is that when we sit in a particular position and try to meditate on Om, it obviously leads to that heightened state of awareness. What if we are lying down and we are either with sound coming out or even internally meditating on Om? Will then that lead to the reverse order, where instead of heightened state of awareness, it will take us slowly into sleep? So I was just wondering if somebody experimented with this, and is there any experience to share?
Yeah. So I'm not a yoga expert, so I have no idea, but I can go with what Krishna has said in Dhyana Yoga, where he says the first criteria is sit erect, straighten your back, go to a quiet place, sit on a tiger skin, a quiet place, your head straight and your spine straight. So why he's saying all that is to get your kundalini in the right position, so that your mind, when the body is still, the mind then becomes still, and then you can meditate, and awareness, heightened awareness comes, is how I've understood this. If you lie down and do it, I presume you will drift off to sleep. That is a possibility there, they will drift off to sleep. So that is a very superficial explanation, but I think what you're actually getting at is perhaps we have to get a meditation expert into this and do a series, a workshop or something, so that we can all adopt that in our life. So it's all talking about theory, isn't it? Let's face it. We talk a lot of theory in these sessions. how do we actually put it in practice will be great. Some of you may be going to yoga schools, you may have yoga teacher, or you may be going to meditation classes. Some of us, by sheer lack of time, we can't do it. So maybe we use this forum and get somebody to do session like how Sundar Ayarji did on Om, do a session or two or more if required on meditation. So let's think about that, Mohan, and come up with a solution.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent.
Madhu,
Sudarshan, I think.
I have like a question or observation. If probably, even in the Sushupti state, like the sort of Jiva goes very near the Brahman, but unable to understand, like, maybe it's very near that, like you're turning the head away or whatever. And in the, like, where you really, you renunciate the world, or you do meditation, and you, like, attain moksha properly, and then you go near the Brahman again. So would it be right to say, like, it is Tamovriddhi, because of Tamovriddhi you are not able to understand, like you are near the Brahman, whereas sleep is Tamovriddhi, isn't it? Whereas the other one, in that thing, it's like a more a Sattva state, and that is why you are able to understand, because it's near the Brahman. One state it's not able to understand, one is able to understand. Is that a right way to think?
Yeah, absolutely right. That Prajnana Ganaha, that word that Varuna has used, Prajnana Ganaha, the Ganaha there, the classic definition, which I did not deal with because of lack of time, that Ganaha Sudarshan actually means Jiva covered with Tamo Guna, Tamas. Tamas is ignorance. Yeah. So that state of the Jiva is called Ganaha. So your that Tamovritti that you said is exactly that Prajnana Gana state. And how will that happen? For the Jiva to know that it is next to Brahman, for that it needs a divine grace. The divine grace has to operate there to lift that ignorance out. And that divine grace is not going to happen unless we have bhakti towards that person. And that bhakti is not going to happen unless we have the jnana towards that person. And that jnana will not come unless we do karma yoga and do all the efforts like how we are doing at this point of time. So everything then gets linked with other karma, jnana, bhakti, and then grace. And grace is the essential criteria to remove the tamas.
Brilliant. I think one observation, I think my friend Kavita from Coimbatore, she probably, we had a discussion in our college about somebody wanted palliative care services, and it's a lighter one anyway. So she referred to somebody, that service in Coimbatore is called Turiya Palliative Services. So I don't know, it's very, what is the significance of that, but that was more on the lighter vein anyway. So is there if there are not any more questions, we can bring this session to an end.
Oh, Pragnesh has got a hand.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. We were talking about this meditation and pranayama or yoga practice. As you know, we are breathing alternatively. Normally also everybody breathes through left or right nostril at various times of the day and various activities. And we can train ourselves with the various breathing practices like pranayama. Same way, the two halves of the brain called cerebral hemispheres, they could also have a diurnal working, and they could also be trained to be switched on and off. That is what the masters do, and eventually switch off both. But I have heard, not experienced personally, that it like diurnal variation in breathing, there is a diurnal variation of the cerebral activity also, and it can be trained, and it can be measured also. There are ways to measure it, and there are ways to quantify.
That's very interesting, Pragnesh. Clearly, I have very little experience of that. There are other persons of neural predispositions here. So anybody wants to comment on Pragnesh's thoughts, please? Nita, Deval, Sudarshan, or anybody else? Yeah, I think controlling one or the other brain sounds a fascinating concept. Let's see. Gosh.
Yeah, Madhu, can I add something? It's Nandish here.
Oh, Nandish, yes. Hi, go on.
Yeah, hi. No, I think in regards to meditation, something which I've recently followed through some contact is Heartfulness Institute. They actually do they have what they call as cleaning meditation and relaxation meditation. And also, as Pragnesh just mentioned, it's about the from the left nostril and the right nostril and so on. And so I can send a link through the Sahiti group. So if you find it.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. Thank you, Nandesh.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Then if there's not more questions, we'll say Om and then finish the session. Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing. You have to say Krishna Paramastu. We have to end. So.
So you're going to Krishna Paramastu.
No, I know. I'm just saying that to end the session. That's all. Then you can do the Om.
Okay. Om. Okay, we'll meet next week then. Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.